Now we're going to move to today's perspective. And on the programme today, we're marking the start 50 years ago of a war that was to last for 15 years and cost the lives of an estimated 150,000 people. We're talking about the Lebanese civil war, a conflict that destabilised the country and the entire region right up to the present day. It broke out with clashes between Christian and pro-Palestinian militias, degenerated into a full-scale conflict involving Syria, Israel, Iran and the Western forces as well of the US and of France. Well, one man who has documented the war, perhaps more than any other, is my guest today, the Oscar-nominated film director Ziad Doueiri. His most recent film, The Insult from 2017, is rather like a commentary on the state of Lebanese society today and the status of the war in people's minds today. We're going to talk to him in just a moment, but first of all, let's just watch a little clip. Just part of the dramatic trailer there for The Insult. Ziad Doueiri joins us here on set. Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us. Tell us about the film, first of all. It tells a story we saw there of an insult, doesn't it, and an altercation afterwards between a Lebanese Christian and a Palestinian construction worker or foreman.
Actually, the idea came with a real incident. I was walking the streets when I was living in Beirut a few years ago, and I was watering my plants, and then the water kind of, instead of going through the gutter, it went through the balcony and it fell on the guy, and the guy looked up and then he said, "What the hell with your water? Be careful." Then I leaned out and we had a little bit of altercation. And then I noticed that he had a Palestinian accent and something just happened and I don't know how it just came out of my mouth. And I said, "You know, I wish Ariel Sharon had wiped you all out." And then I was told, you know, my friend was behind me, and then she says, "How could you say something like this? It's like, insult whatever you want, but you just can't say those kind of words." So I went down and I asked for, I apologized to him, and he kind of like was very hurt. Yeah. And then consequently, I went down to his boss and I said, "Look, I want to tell you something. I insulted one of your workers, and he's not accepting this box of chocolate from me. So if you can just at least give it to him." And he said, "Who's the guy?" I said, "It's the guy right up the street with the yellow eyeglasses." And he says, "I know he has a big mouth, and I'm going to go fire him." And I found myself in the situations where I had to protect him actually from being fired. And then things got resolved about 20 minutes later. And on the way back to my apartment, I got this story. I said, what if this is the story that I have to write?
It's amazing. I didn't know that it came from a real...
it came from a real thing.
That's incredible to know.
Yeah.
I mean, the story is obviously set well after the war, but watching the film, I mean, it's a clear commentary, isn't it, on the difficult factions and the different relationships between people in Lebanon.
It's about this, and it's mainly about how something very, very simple could become a big issue in the country. One word you say, and it could turn people on the streets and get very, very upheaval about it. This is the idea. Actually, I still am haunted by this idea that I could say one word, and if it's reported and if it goes in the media or something, how one simple word, pure reactionary, could turn into a much bigger problem. And even until today, emotionally, I'm still haunted by the precariousness of the situation. It could happen in any place in the world, actually, today.
And you were born, weren't you, in Beirut in 1963, grew up there during the first half of the Civil War, so it broke out roughly when you were around 12 years old. What was that period like for you personally? I
remember April 13, 1975, it was on a Sunday. And that day, I remember very well, we were supposed to go have some roasted chicken, something that we used to do every weekend with my family. We were supposed to go on a driving promenade, and we stopped at a place. We got a couple of chickens. I was supposed to go to my cousin's house up in the hills. And we got stopped in the middle of the road, which is a 20-minute ride, by a checkpoint, but it's not an army checkpoint or a police checkpoint. It was just a private militia, which we've never seen before. And they said, just make a U-turn and go home. And my dad asked, what's going on? He says, you have no idea. And my dad says, no, actually, I don't have an idea what's going on. He says, the war's just started. Just take your family and go back. It took a while for me and my family to realize the gravity of the situation, because it did happen quickly, but it didn't spread so quickly. So it took a little bit of time for the infiltration of war to get encrusted in our mind. So for the next few weeks, we were going to high school, but there was an inherent tension. And I remember that my high school was in the dominant Christian neighborhood of Beirut, even though the city was united, but there was some kind of you can feel that it's a little bit sectorized. Like, this is the dominant Christian and this is the Muslim area. My school was in the Christian area. And then slowly we start feeling the danger because we come from the Muslim side, even though my parents were very, secular. They were not religious. And
what was it like as you grew up? I mean, I know that the war went on for 15 years. You weren't there
Yes.
for all of it, but growing up through all of it.
Look, it's interesting when I think about it. I made a film about it, my first film called West Beirut, which is how a teenage discover his teenage life in the context of a war. And today when I think about it, in spite of the fact that it was scary at a time, but it was actually very liberating at a time. The reason for that is you're a teenage, and the war was not happening every single day. There's a lot of it. We were in shelters a lot of time, but also we used to go to the movies a lot, and that's when I discovered music. And I was going through the Beatles period, then I went to American rock period. It was all during the late 70s, early 80s, which left an indelible mark in my life. And when I think about it today, was it that traumatizing? It was not, actually. Actually, it was, like I said, it was liberating, because mom and dad were very focused on earning their living, and they did not put so much pressure on me and my brother. So we kind of were freely roaming around the streets of West Beirut, which was very rich at that time. A lot of journalists going on, a lot of publication going on. We were exposed to an incredible amount of information. And when you're a teenage, you cannot absorb everything, but it gets registered. Today, as an adult, I kind of value those days. I don't want to say I miss it, because nobody misses the war, but it was such an enriching part of my life that I'm trying to inject that to my daughter, 16-year-old daughter living in Paris. I'm constantly trying to remind her. I says, don't forget where your parents come from. Don't forget that backside that you have. But she's too young. She does not have a part. I'm trying to transmit some of this genetic material to her.
And you talk about forgetting it. I mean, one of the things that's criticised is it's almost not forgotten about, but little is said about it in Lebanon, isn't it? I mean, there's a general amnesty for what happened. I gather it's not even taught in schools. Do you think that's wrong?
That's terribly wrong, because if you don't talk about it, how would you learn from your past? I mean, I think there's a slight exaggeration also when they say that people are completely in amnesia. It's not so true. There is a big amnesia, but not that much, because the young generation still hear their parents talking about it. And the war ended, the civil war, but the conflict never ended. The people today, the teenage or the young kids, are still experiencing a leftover of the war and the new things, like the big explosion that happened in the seaport. It's kind of related to the civil war, even though it's not a direct descendant from it, but it's a continuation of a country still in conflict. The collapse of the financial system is huge. It's not a simple thing. It's not just one bank went bankrupt. The entire country was stolen by those politicians. And the younger, who are not studying the Lebanese civil war from 75 to 1990, but they're experiencing other form of upheaval. And then the Israeli-Palestinian war in Gaza, and then in Lebanon, everybody is affected by it. So
yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because you were telling me just before you came in, you live here in Paris now. You're in the middle of making a TV series in Paris. But what's it like watching that new conflict unfolding, ceasefire at the moment?
It breaks a lot of our hearts. I mean, nobody wants to see their country being destroyed. The level of destruction that's happening right now is tremendous. This is not a small war. This is, I mean, there are more people being killed than the Ukrainian war, the Russian-Ukrainian war. And if you ask literally everyone who comes from Lebanon or the Middle East, we are completely shocked by what's going on, really. It's such a sad thing. But for some reason also, I keep trying to stay optimistic about it, because I've been through time during the Lebanese civil war where it was so connected to despair. And then somehow we managed to get out of it because the Lebanese people have an incredible will for survival. I don't know where we bring it, where it comes from. We always have this thing that you have this floaters that's going to take us back to the surface. And we always have that hope, actually.
Good to end on a positive note.
Thank you
Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us today. Ziad Doueiri is most recent film, The Illnselters, we saw at the top there in the middle of making another series as well. Thanks very much for joining us on the programme today.